Hey folks, welcome back to the next video on matrix multiplication, and I promise this would be the last explanation on multiplication examples and or the concepts. And after this we'll jump into the problems, and this is going to be a super short video. Just wanted to complete the thought process where we left off last time. Just as a quick recap, last time we started from matrix multiplication. We spoke about the scalar or the scaling matrix. Then we spoke about the rotation matrix, right? How things rotate or reflect. This was the reflection. We spoke about how this can be used as a rotation clockwise and anti-clockwise. If you remember in this diagram, like here we discussed how this matrix kind of scales up or scales down, and how kind of this matrix where you have the diagonal elements on the left side as numbers and all other as non-zero, how that the effect of the matrix itself is a scalar, and we discuss about that. Similarly, there is another interesting concept called as shear, which we did initially scope in the very beginning, if you remember, where I told this part, right, skewing or shear kind of thing, where it kind of compresses, and that's what we're going to discuss, the last piece of the puzzle. That's what we're going to discuss today. Let me scroll down all the way to the bottom, guys. One second, give me 1 second. All right, hopefully now you can see my screen. So the topic of today is shear, matrix multiplication, transformation as a shear. Sorry, how does the matrix multiplication give the effect of a shear when it transforms, or when there's a transformational effect of a shear? And not everyone might know what is a shear, and I also did not know that this is what is called a shear. For the benefit of everyone, let me explain that. I've taken a kind of a picture and some words from one of the Google images. It's not mine, but I've just felt free to reuse it. If you see the picture here, right, let me point it out. This is a square box, and this is kind of at a particular angle. And whatever is here, it's not readable, so I've kind of written it back here. So what shear means is, I'm going to read it out loud. A transformation in which all the points along a given line L, this is the given line L over here, this is the given line L in this diagram, right, remain fixed. Assume that like it's almost like an x-axis, right? If there is L is towards the x-axis, the x-axis in this diagram, it could be y also in a different diagram, is fixed, while all other points are shifted parallel to L. Here the shift is parallel to L. This is the L, it's in the same direction, parallel to L, by a distance proportional to their perpendicular distance from L. So whatever this distance is, right, this arrows, if you see the black arrows in the diagram, those, whatever that unit is proportional. If it's this one arrow is 5 units, all these points over here on this line and this line will get shifted by only 5 units, which is from the perpendicular distance of this line, right, from the y-axis, right? That's what kind of a shear means. That's what it kind of gives a kind of a sheared look, like as if it's kind of pushed and compressed, right? Another interesting point is when you shear it, right, the second point, it does not change the area of the whole block. So whatever is the area of this rectangle, right, it will still remain the same. The area does not change. Just the points, in this case, the points on the vertical axis, the y-axis, or these two lines, right, are kind of pushed by certain distance in the positive x direction. That's what shearing means, and we have more examples to give you an example. So if the whole concept is, in any types of computer graphics or animation, if this square box is your input, what input is going to be matrix. So let's say this square box is nothing but a bunch of points in space or some xy plane, so it will have coordinates. So let's say we put those points in a matrix. For example, let's say we take these 4 points, 1, 2, 3 and 4, okay, and let's say we put those points in a matrix, okay, and for example, let's say I'm putting just point 1 and point 2, okay, out of the 4 points. So what I want to do is I want to shift this point to this point, and this point to this point over here, and this point here, and this point here. That's what the transformation means. So what kind of matrix multiplication should I use on the left? Again, being repetitive, the matrix on the left kind of has the transformational effect on the right, the immediate right, okay, that's what it means. So this is my input matrix, which is nothing about one of the points I'm taking, and I need to shift each of these points. So what matrix should I use on the left as a transformation matrix and multiply it? So in the output, when I get a new matrix, I get the location of this new point, this point, and this point. Sorry, let me just rub the diagram, hold on, so that it's clear. So clear of the clutter. Okay. All right. So now this is my input matrix and this is my output matrix, and I'm going to transfer each of the points. So I'm taking this point, right? This point. So this point has to move to this point here, right? This is the new point, right? Okay. So this old point in this matrix has to move to this new point. Okay. Sorry, this is the old point. This is the old point. Let me remove it. All right. Sorry about that. Okay, this is the old point. So my question is, what is the transformation matrix I will use here, which will give me this kind of effect, where algebraically it looks like this point is here, but when I look at it from a transformational or a geometric standpoint, basically there is a shear effect on this matrix given by this matrix. That's what it is. Okay, so let's understand that by examples. And like I said, in this case, the shearing was keeping the x-axis fixed. You can always also keep the y-axis fixed, or kind of use both of the axes. And these are the examples of that. Okay. Okay. If you see on the left side on the Mona Lisa, there is a shearing effect keeping the x-axis fixed. If you see this particular point here, this does not change throughout. So this is the input and this is the output image. Let's say if you have to write a computer program or a computer graphics or animation, where you will be given an image like this of Mona Lisa, and you need to create a shearing effect keeping the x-axis fixed, and the effect should look like this. How do you do that? So basically we know it's going to be some sort of matrix multiplication. We will take a matrix multiplication on the left side here, which is a transformation matrix, and apply it on this input, which is multiplication, to give this output. We know that. So we need to find out what that matrix is. In this case, the shearing is happening across the x-axis. If you see, the x-axis almost constant. The y, the red line in the image, is slightly tilted at an angle. So we need that angle. So if someone gives us, okay, I need the squishing or shearing at this angle, how will you do that? That's a question. In this case, if you see, it's the opposite shear effect. So the y-axis is kind of kept constant, right? As if it's like closing a door, or you're opening a page of the book, or flipping the page of the book, where you're turning from one page to another page, right? Stuff like that. So the y-axis, this axis over here, is fixed, and the shearing effect is on the x dimension, right? So that's what it is. If you see, if I slightly tilt this page, this looks like sheared, right? And they've already given it the matrix here, but this is blurred, so we'll talk about that. So that's kind of the shearing effect that I wanted to explain. So now the question is, how do you do that? Okay, now let's come back. Okay, here there are examples and as well as the matrix itself. So in this case, let's say there is a letter M over here. Okay, this letter M, and it's at rest. So this is my input matrix, and this is my output matrix, which is post smearing, right? And in this case, again, my x is almost fixed. I'm pushing it in the direction of y, right? So if you see here, this particular distance, I'm pushing it out, and it's like I'm pulling all the points towards my right, keeping the x fixed, and then it will give me the smear effect. So if you see here, the coordinate over here is x1 and y1. It's slightly blurred, but I'm writing it down. And the new coordinates or the output is x2 and y2. So how do you do that? So the answer is simple. You take one point at a time on this image and transfer each point using a matrix algebra to a new dimension. And when you join all the points back, you will get the net effect of the shearing. That's what animation and computer graphics do in any movies, right? And this is the matrix. So this is my input matrix, where I'm taking the point x1 and y1. On the left matrix will always have a transformational effect on the right? So if you see this matrix, the diagonal elements are 1. The leftmost element here at the bottom is 0. And this is what does the magic. If this was also 0 like this, okay, then this becomes simple scalar matrix that you remember, that it will just scale up by this much unit. You know that, right? But when I change this 1, 0 over here to say 0.3 and I make it 1, just one small change in the number on the topmost right makes the matrix move away from a scalar matrix to a shearing matrix. That's what it means, right? And that's what this effect does. Okay, similarly over here, the same example that we took as a vector, right? Either we can take this as two vectors, independent vectors, and the net effect, or you can take this as the resultant vector. Like if I move from here to here in the east direction and then move again in the north direction, the net displacement is from my starting point till my ending point. So I know this is a new vector. So let's say the output is supposed to be this vector. So what I need is an output effect of this vector where I see, okay, my x is not changing, pretty much it's the a0 coordinate, but I have pushed my resultant vector or this vector. However, because if you push one of your input vectors, your result is going to change. So you can figure out however you want. Either you want to take this as your vector, that this resultant vector as your input and change it, or you want to take this as your input and then add it out, doesn't matter. But for the time being, let's assume that I'm going to take this vector and I'm going to tilt it. So this is the tilting effect, right? So this was the original B, like this somewhere here, and this is the delta it's moving, and the delta here is given by plus B. See, here it was only A, B, and here it's A plus B. So I need a plus B effect on the tilting of all the points towards the right? So what kind of matrix does that? So here is what it is given here. The input matrix is given by A and B. This is the input, or this is the input image, which is this vector. In this case, they're taking this vector from here to here. Let me again erase it so for clarity. Okay. So if you see here, this is the input vector A and B. That's what they came. So they want to take A and B, this vector, this from here to here, and this point, the coordinates are A and B, right? This point, and that's what it means. I want to take this vector and I want to push it down, like just push it towards the right, and push it a bit down. That's what the effect is of shearing here. So how do I do that? So basically take these coordinates A and B, okay, which is the x and the y coordinate of this resultant vector, or you can take this as two individual vectors, and apply this shearing matrix, which is like I discussed here. On this diagonal it's 1, and then there's a number here, it's again 1, and this is 0. So whenever this comes, this becomes a shearing matrix. When this number becomes 0, it becomes a scalar matrix. So when I multiply using this matrix on the left, the net effect, if you apply the matrix algebra, it will look like A plus B plus and B, which will be the new coordinates. So the coordinates of this vector here, the end point, right, will be, if this is your x and y axis, right? So this becomes, this vector gets shifted here, right? This is a new point. So the x coordinate becomes A plus B, and the y coordinates becomes B. That's kind of the vector algebra here, the x and the y. So that's the effect it creates, the shearing effect, right? So that's what it means. How do you create shearing matrix? So anytime you see this kind of a matrix, that means you know that it's going to create a shearing effect. So that's what it means, rotation, shearing, how things are going to be done based on certain type of matrix. Not that every matrix will have, every matrix is a transformation, but these are the basic examples to understand and to give you a concept on a day-to-day basis how it's related, okay? All right, so let's try to come towards the end of this video. Over here, it's again the same. Let's say instead of the letter M, let's say I have a square box and I want to shear it, keeping the x-axis fixed, and I want to shear it by a factor beta. So that's what this means. You'll have this as input and a matrix, all the points. Then you'll have on the left side a transformational shear matrix, and the output will come to this point, something like that. So if I have to generalize the formula, this is what it means, right? Any point as an input which you want to shear, you keep it on the right. On the left, you multiply by something called a shearing matrix, where the diagonal elements will be 1 and 1. At the bottommost left will be 0. It's a 2 by 2 matrix. You can use also a 3 by 3 for 3-dimensional, but I'm just giving an example in this. The diagonal should be 1. Anything below the diagonal on the left side should be 0. On the upper side, there is a shearing factor, whatever is a factor, like in this case it's beta, or whatever factor you want to share it by, right? In this case, if you see, it was 1, stuff like that. Okay, and if you multiply those, you'll get two new coordinates, x and y, and that will be sheared by a combination of what is the shearing factor here and this coordinates itself. That's the effect that you'll get anywhere. For example, over here, the shearing factor is 0.3. Over here, the shearing factor is 1, and the coordinates itself. That's what shearing means. All right, that's pretty much a wrap up. Let's give the closing comments as always, and we'll jump into some more interesting videos. So what are the closing comments? Again, at the risk of being repetitive, matrix has to be seen in two ways. One is the algebraic lens, and when you have to apply the geometric lens. In algebraic lens, the position of the matrix matters. When you say the matrices, when you take matrices multiplication, the position within the matrix and the sequence of that, which comes first, whether it's A or B or it's B or A. That kind of relative order matters in terms of multiplication. And what does not matter is the nature of the problem, whether you're solving it for a pizza, whether you're trying to change the picture of a Mona Lisa, whether you're trying to reduce the size of a clock, all the examples that we saw, it does not really matter. The computer just wants to know the coordinates and it will create the effect. That's called as the abstraction. You're abstracting the essence of it, not worried about the nature of the problem. That's the algebraic definition. And all the rules of matrix algebra multiplication that I taught you about row and column that apply. And the interesting intuition that you get is by using the geometric lens, right? So what it means, each matrix moves or transforms the objects in a particular way. That's what we are taught, right? And so matrix multiplication is the effect of transformation. The effect of transformation. The matrix on the left, this is the left matrix and this is the right matrix. So matrix multiplication is nothing but an effect of transformation this matrix has on this matrix. This is being transformed, okay? This is being transformed or moved to a different point, and this is the transformer, if you want to call it that way, okay? This is what it transforms on the left side. So if I put another matrix on the left, this matrix is going to transform or have a transformational effect on the net matrix of these two. That's what we kind of discussed earlier. So that's all I wanted to leave, and this, I promise, this kind of ends the matrix multiplication, talking about the concept and abstraction and intuition, guys. Okay, so enjoy the magic of matrix. We'll solve more problems in the next video. Hopefully you stay tuned and you enjoyed this session. Thank you.